Welcome, dear friends of the Zodiac, to my channel Wisdom of Zodiac Signs. Today we enter a part of the cosmos that is both tender and complex, the sign of Cancer, ruled by the ever-changing moon. Now, most people think of Cancer as one unified archetype, the nurturing soul who bakes cookies, cries at movies, and remembers everyone's birthday. But as someone who has studied the stars and the human psyche for decades, I can assure you that there is a fascinating divide. A Cancer born in June does not always resemble a Cancer born in July, and the difference can be as striking as high tide and low tide. June Cancers often rush into life wearing their hearts like badges of honor, sometimes leaving behind emotional trail notes in every room. July Cancers, by contrast, are masters of restraint, quietly building walls of protection until one piercing look from them could silence a crowded room. I find it both amusing and deeply telling. It is as if the same moon writes two separate stories depending on when it rises over the summer sky. One Cancer will write you 5 heartfelt messages before breakfast, while the other will brood silently over something you said last week, still deciding whether it was an insult or a compliment. As students of astrology, psychology, and even Buddhist thought, we learn here that vulnerability and restraint are not opposites but complementary paths. Both reveal what it means to live with sensitivity in a world that rarely honors it. And yes, we can laugh along the way, because let's be honest, if you have never seen a Cancer cry over a touching commercial, then perhaps you have never really met a Cancer at all. At the heart of Cancer lies the moon. And if you've spent any time studying astrology or simply living alongside a Cancer, you know this makes all the difference. The moon governs cycles, moods, tides, and the shifting inner weather of our emotions. To understand Cancer is to understand what it means to live in constant dialogue with change. Unlike the sun, steady and self-assured, the moon is moody, quick to wax and wane, and never shy about pulling us into deeper waters. Cancers embody this rhythm so thoroughly that it sometimes feels as if their lives are lived in lunar phases. One moment they're radiant, the next they're hidden, but always they are tuned to the subtle music of feeling. Anyone who has had a Cancer friend knows exactly what I mean. They are the ones who text you at 3 in the morning with a strange certainty that you're not okay, and, frustratingly, they're usually right. They can catch the change in your tone over a single word, notice when your sigh drags on a second too long at dinner, and recall with eerie accuracy the details you barely remember mentioning. Your grandmother's pancake recipe? They've tucked it away. That time you cried over a dog food commercial? Forever archived in their private emotional library. They absorb everything not because they are nosy, but because their empathy is a bottomless well. The danger, of course, is that sometimes they drown in their own compassion, feeling for others so much that they forget to breathe for themselves. Yet let no one confuse tenderness with fragility. Push a Cancer too far, and you'll quickly meet the pincers. I've always said it's a rare talent to bake someone cookies on Monday and exile them from the kingdom of kindness by Tuesday, but Cancers have mastered it. Their wrath is never loud for the sake of drama, but precise, cutting, and unforgettable. And here is where the story deepens. Split this moon-born energy into those born in June and those born in July, and you find two currents of the same ocean. One more expressive, the other more guarded. One crashing like high tide, the other pulling back like the low. Both are undeniably Cancer. Yet the differences remind us that even the moon never shines the same way twice. If you want to understand the essence of Cancer, start with their emotional style. It's where their lunar fingerprints are most visible. And here we find the split between June and July Cancers, a division that feels less like a subtle shade and more like two distinct philosophies on how to live with feeling. June Cancers are like an open diary left on the kitchen counter. Pages covered in pink gel pen scribbles, a few tear stains, and maybe even a doodle of a heart pierced by Cupid's arrow. They emote with abandon. Crying at commercials? Check. Sending 12 texts in a row to clarify whether you really meant "I'm fine" or "I'm fine." Absolutely. For them, vulnerability is not an occasional slip, it's practically a full-time career. They live as if emotions are meant to be shared, raw and unedited, painting life in bold strokes that may not always be tidy but are always honest. Now July Cancers, on the other hand, are a different story altogether. Picture a treasure chest lying at the bottom of the sea. Inside are luminous pearls, emotions so rich and beautiful they could illuminate an entire city, but the chest is locked, and the key buried deep in the sand. This is July Cancer energy, deep feeling, carefully guarded. To outsiders they appear stoic, even detached, but that's an illusion. Beneath the still surface lies a private ocean storm. They feel every bit as much as their June counterparts, but they practice restraint as if it were an art form. It's not that they can't share, it's that they want to make sure you've earned the privilege of seeing what's inside. From an astrological perspective, this divide makes perfect sense. June Cancers are still brushing up against Gemini's influence, with Mercury lending them expressiveness, playfulness, and a touch of dramatic flair. July Cancers lean closer to Leo territory, where the sun's pride and composure seep into their emotional DNA, giving them a regal air of self-containment. So while June walks through life with a heart proudly pinned to the sleeve, July keeps the heart in the vault, tucked away like family heirlooms. Both are true to Cancer's lunar essence, but each reminds us that emotion can either be a painting hung in a gallery for all to see or a secret manuscript kept in the family archive. And in classic Cancer fashion, both approaches are equally valid and equally capable of making you cry. When we speak of Cancer in matters of the heart, we are speaking of devotion incarnate. Whether born in June or July, these lunar souls do not enter relationships lightly. They commit as though they are signing a sacred covenant, one sealed not in ink but in tides of feeling. Yet the way they express this commitment differs so sharply that you might think you are watching two entirely different plays written under the same moonlight. June Cancers embody the role of the caretaker, and they do it with theatrical sincerity. Imagine waking up to a text that says, "Just thinking of you," only to find two more by lunchtime asking if you ate, drank water, and remembered your coat. Their love is tactile, practical, and relentlessly attentive. They will cook your favorite meal even before you mention that you've had a rough day, and they will stay up until dawn listening to your sorrows with the patience of a saint and the persistence of an investigative journalist. It is sweet, it is nourishing, but let's be honest, it can also feel like you're sharing an emotional Wi-Fi network that they've decided to run diagnostics on every hour. July Cancers, however, love in a different register. They are protectors, quiet bodyguards of the heart. You may not receive a flood of romantic texts, but you will come outside to find your car battery mysteriously replaced, or notice the way they glare at anyone who dares to cross you. Their love does not hover, it shields. It may lack the constant verbal reassurance of June's effusive affection, but it offers a different kind of security, the kind that makes you feel safe to be vulnerable, because you know someone is standing watch. Both styles carry a shadow. June's devotion can veer into smothering, while July's protection can become possessive. The challenge for Cancers in love is remembering that devotion must breathe. As one Buddhist teacher wisely noted, true love gives freedom, not chains. Whether through the open arms of June or the steady shield of July, Cancer's task is to transform deep feeling into companionship rather than control. And if they manage this balance, they become partners who love not just fiercely, but wisely, an achievement as rare and precious as the moon itself. Cancers often carry the reputation of being homebodies, and while there is truth in that, it is far from the full picture. Spend some time observing them and you will see two very different approaches to social life depending on whether they were born in June or July. June Cancers, touched by Gemini's outgoing influence, can be surprisingly sociable. They're the ones organizing group dinners, making sure everyone has a seat at the table, and raising a toast so heartfelt that even the most stoic guest finds themselves wiping away a tear. But here's the catch, their energy is on a timer. They'll sparkle as the life of the party until precisely 10 o'clock, at which point they retreat home to fuzzy socks, Netflix, and perhaps a journal entry about how emotionally exhausting the evening really was. It's not antisocial behavior, it's simply lunar self-preservation. July Cancers, on the other hand, bring a different flavor. They may show up to the same party, but don't expect them to dominate the room. Instead, you'll find them in the corner, holding a one-on-one conversation that somehow drifts from weekend plans to the meaning of life in record time. Less about clinking glasses of champagne, more about offering quiet, grounding wisdom. They prefer depth over breadth, sincerity over spectacle. Together, June and July Cancers make an unexpectedly balanced duo. One acts as the host, spreading laughter and connection, the other plays the sage, anchoring conversations with insight. It's almost like a cosmic tag team approach to social life. One keeps the party lively, the other makes sure it matters. And in classic Cancer fashion, both are simply trying to ensure that everyone feels at home, even if that home happens to be a crowded living room filled with strangers. When it comes to creativity, the contrast between June and July Cancers could not be more striking. June Cancers embody the restless visionary. They're the ones experimenting with bold new art styles, starting 3 side hustles before breakfast, and yes, even painting glitter on seashells and calling it a business venture. Their creativity is alive, daring, and sometimes wildly impractical, but that's the point. It thrives on motion, on chasing inspiration like a surfer chasing the perfect wave. There's a playful charm in their willingness to risk failure just to see what might come alive. July Cancers, by contrast, are the traditionalists. Their artistry leans toward the timeless, rooted in structure and meaning. They're the ones perfecting grandmother's recipe, painting tranquil landscapes, or building furniture meant to last generations. While June craves novelty, July seeks continuity. Where June reinvents the wheel, July reminds us why the wheel was so valuable in the first place. From a psychological lens, June's experiments mirror an extroverted search for possibility, while July's devotion to craft reflects a deeper need for stability and permanence. And from a Buddhist perspective, both paths teach us something. Impermanence fuels innovation, but tradition offers the grounding wisdom that keeps life steady. Both are equally brilliant, just different tides of the same moon. When we move Cancer energy from the kitchen table to the boardroom, the differences between June and July become fascinating to observe. A June Cancer in leadership thrives on emotional transparency. They will tell you exactly what they expect, cheer you on when you deliver, and perhaps even share a little too much about their weekend drama while doing it. Their style is motivational, almost coach-like. You can imagine them giving pep talks in the hallway as if the office were the locker room before the big game. Bring them a creative idea and they will clap the loudest, showering you with praise, sometimes more than you think you deserve. It's inspiring, yes, but also a reminder that June Cancers can turn the office into a kind of family reunion, complete with oversharing and the occasional emotional group hug. July Cancers as bosses are different altogether. They embody quiet loyalty, and while you won't hear daily affirmations or receive confetti-filled emails about your performance, you'll notice something far more enduring. When it matters, they stand up for you. Their support is subtle, almost understated, but it carries weight. When a July Cancer boss defends you in a meeting, it feels less like casual approval and more like a ceremonial knighting. You walk away feeling protected, seen, and trusted. Both leadership styles have their value. June brings warmth, encouragement, and a touch of emotional drama. July offers stability, discretion, and unwavering loyalty. Understanding the difference spares you workplace confusion and allows you to thrive under their guidance. Whether it's the cheerleader or the silent shield, Cancer teaches us that leadership is not only about authority but also about care, and in true lunar fashion, each does it in their own tide and rhythm. There's a popular meme floating around that says Cancers are always crying in the bathroom at a party, and like most memes, it's funny because it's just true enough to sting. But let's add some nuance. A June Cancer will be in there because someone made an offhand remark about their shoes, and now they're replaying it like it was a Shakespearean tragedy. Meanwhile, a July Cancer is crying not over what was said but over what they themselves said, or worse, how they laughed. 3 hours later, they're still convinced their awkward chuckle revealed deep flaws in their soul and that everyone in the room is secretly plotting to exile them from the friend group. Both scenarios highlight the lunar gift and curse of hypersensitivity. Where June feels everything externally, July turns the microscope inward. The bathroom becomes their sacred sanctuary, a temple where tissues replace incense and the mirror serves as both confessor and critic. And you know what? That deserves respect. At least they're not making a scene in the living room. Private tears, after all, show a level of emotional etiquette most signs can't master. In its own way, this is Cancer's quiet humor. They suffer deeply, they feel endlessly, and yet they still care enough to keep it tidy. Now that's emotional class. People often ask me, does it really matter whether a Cancer is born in June or July? Isn't Cancer just Cancer? And after years of research into astrology, psychology, and the subtle art of human behavior, my answer is a firm no, it absolutely matters. Think of it this way, two actors can play the same role on stage, but one delivers it as comedy while the other makes it a tragedy. Both are faithful to the script, yet the experience is entirely different. June and July Cancers are like that, two renditions of the same lunar song, each with its own rhythm and mood. Understanding this difference isn't about putting people into boxes, it's about cultivating empathy. With June Cancers, the task is to honor their openness while gently reminding them that not every emotion needs to be broadcast in high definition. They thrive on expression, but sometimes even the moon benefits from a little cloud cover. July Cancers, on the other hand, require a different approach. Respect their privacy, but also reassure them that vulnerability won't sink the ship. They need to know it's safe to bring some of that treasure chest of emotion to the surface. Astrology, at its best, is not about judgment but about compassion. It's the study of patterns that remind us to meet each person where they are, whether they're crying over their shoes or overanalyzing their laugh. When we lift Cancer energy out of the ordinary and place it under a spiritual lens, the picture becomes even more profound. This is where Buddhist wisdom and the Zodiac shake hands. June Cancers remind us that vulnerability is not a flaw but a form of courage. They show their hearts without apology, and in doing so, they embody the same paradox as the lotus flower, rising pure and radiant even while rooted in muddy water. Their tears, often the subject of jokes, are in truth a form of irrigation, watering the soil of compassion so it can grow stronger and wider. July Cancers, by contrast, teach us the lesson of resilience. Their guardedness isn't coldness, it's survival. They have learned, sometimes the hard way, that the world is not always kind, and they protect their hearts accordingly. In Buddhist teachings, one is told to guard the mind as if it were the most precious treasure. July Cancers practice this intuitively, building walls not to shut others out but to preserve the sanctity of their inner temple. Together, these two expressions of Cancer energy create a spiritual balance, one path through radical openness, the other through disciplined restraint. And perhaps the humor here is that both are right. The soul, like the moon, waxes and wanes, needing both light and shadow to stay whole. As we bring this exploration to a close, let us pause and appreciate the full spectrum of Cancer energy. What we've uncovered is that June and July Cancers are not two opposing species, but two variations of the same lunar melody. June Cancers resemble open diaries, visionaries, caretakers, and occasional party starters, wearing their hearts on their sleeves and making sure no one leaves without a hug. July Cancers, meanwhile, are more like locked treasure chests, protectors, sages, and traditionalists, guarding their depth with quiet dignity and offering wisdom in whispers rather than shouts. One will cry over a sentimental commercial, the other will replay a mildly awkward handshake for 3 days, but both are reminders that the beauty of life lies in feeling deeply, even when those feelings come with a little chaos. The lesson here is simple yet profound. Vulnerability and resilience are not opposites but complementary strengths. To embrace Cancer energy, whether you are one yourself or simply love one, is to embrace the fullness of humanity, tender yet tough, nurturing yet protective, messy yet magnificent. And perhaps that is why the world needs its Cancers. They remind us that love, in all its imperfect forms, is what makes life worth living. So, dear viewers, are you Team June Cancer, Team July Cancer, or simply a curious Virgo lurking for the drama? Whichever you are, take this wisdom into your own life. And if you enjoyed this journey, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe to my channel, Wisdom of Zodiac Signs, where the stars are not distant strangers but living teachers. Until next time, stay wise, stay kind, and yes, stay just a little bit crabby.